In the bustling corridors of Salt Lake City International Airport, a child's gray suitcase sits abandoned beside a bathroom mirror. When a police dog in training suddenly begins to bark and bite at it frantically, the entire terminal falls silent. Inside, investigators find no bombs or drugs, only neatly folded children's clothes, a button-eyed rag doll, and a handwritten note that sends chills down their spines. If you find this suitcase, find me. I'm still here, but I can't speak. For FBI agent Nathan Hale, the discovery is more than just another case. It's a haunting echo of his own past loss. As security footage reveals shadowy glimpses of a figure who has somehow survived undetected for 3 years within the airport's forgotten spaces, a chilling question emerges. What terror could make a young girl choose to disappear without ever leaving the building? The answer lies in a web of secrets that powerful people will kill to protect. Follow our channel for more gripping stories that expose the darkness hiding in plain sight. Like and comment to let us know where you're watching from and what shocked you most about this airport mystery that's captivating millions across America. The soft fluorescent lights of Salt Lake City International Airport flickered momentarily, casting eerie shadows across the empty women's restroom. It was 5:47 a.m., that peculiar time when night reluctantly surrenders to dawn, when Maria Cortez, a cleaning attendant of 15 years, pushed her cart through the swinging door. The wheels squeaked against the polished tiles, echoing through the deserted space. Maria hummed a tune her grandmother taught her, the melody bouncing off the bathroom stalls. Her movements were mechanical, practiced over thousands of identical mornings. She sprayed, wiped, and replaced, a dance she performed without thought, until she saw it. In the corner, nestled against the wall beside the large mirror, sat a small gray suitcase, child-sized. The zipper was partially open, revealing nothing but darkness within. No airport security tag, no identification label, no airline sticker, only a faded butterfly decal on its side. Its once vibrant colors now dulled by time and touch. "Hello," Maria called out, her voice unnaturally loud in the silent bathroom. No answer. She reached for her radio, pressing the call button 3 times. Static answered. The early hour meant most security personnel were changing shifts. Maria hesitated, her hand hovering over the suitcase. In post-9/11 America, unattended luggage meant protocols, evacuations, and paperwork. But something about this particular bag, its small size, the careful placement, the childish sticker, made her pause. "This is Terminal B, women's restroom near Gate 17. I found an unattended bag, requesting assistance." She finally spoke into the radio. Only silence responded. Maria sighed, knowing the morning rush would begin within the hour. Passengers would flood the terminal, and whatever this was needed addressing now. 7 minutes later, Maria had counted every second. Officer Jeremy Tanner appeared with Rusty, a Belgian Malinois in his final stages of explosive detection training. The young dog's ears were perked forward, his posture alert but not alarmed. "Morning, Maria. Another lost bag?" Tanner asked, his voice tired. He'd been pulling double shifts all week. "This one feels different," she replied, pointing to the gray suitcase. "It's been placed too carefully, and no one's claimed it despite announcements." Tanner nodded, guiding Rusty toward the bag with practiced commands. The dog approached cautiously, his nose working overtime. 3 feet from the suitcase, Rusty's behavior changed dramatically. His tail, which had been wagging slightly, went rigid, his ears flattened against his skull. Then came the sound that would haunt the terminal for weeks to come. It wasn't a bark, it wasn't a growl. It was something between a whine and a howl, a sound that made the hair on the back of Tanner's neck stand up. Before his handler could react, Rusty lunged forward and sank his teeth into the fabric of the suitcase, pulling and shaking it with an intensity that shocked both humans present. "Rusty, halt!" Tanner commanded. But the dog refused to obey, something that had never happened before. He continued to bite and pull at the suitcase with single-minded determination. Maria backed away instinctively, her hand covering her mouth. Tanner's radio crackled to life with concerned voices demanding updates. Within seconds, the restroom door burst open as 2 more security officers rushed in, hands on their holstered weapons. "Clear the terminal," Tanner ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. "Now!" The next 4 minutes unfolded in controlled chaos. The cheerful morning announcements abruptly cut off mid-sentence. The ambient music silenced. Passengers queuing for early flights were swiftly directed toward emergency exits, creating a wave of confused murmurs that quickly evolved into frightened whispers. An eerie stillness descended upon the normally bustling terminal. In the distance, sirens wailed as local police and FBI's airport division responded to the potential threat. Behind hastily erected barriers, passengers clutched their carry-ons and each other, faces pale with modern America's greatest fear. Inside the restroom, now a command center for the bomb squad, Special Agent Nathan Hale of the FBI knelt beside the suitcase. At 47, Hale had seen everything from drug smuggling to human trafficking in his 22 years with the Bureau. His once black hair was now salt and pepper, and the lines around his eyes told stories of sleepless nights and closed cases. "The dog's reaction is inconsistent with explosives," said the bomb technician after scanning the bag. "No chemical traces either. Safe to open manually." Hale nodded, pulling on latex gloves with practiced precision. The zipper resisted slightly, as if reluctant to reveal its secrets. When it finally gave way, the gathered officials collectively held their breath. No wires, no plastic explosives, no drugs. Instead, children's clothes, folded with meticulous care. A small purple t-shirt, miniature jeans with rainbow patches on the knees, a yellow sundress, pressed as if for a special occasion. Beneath the clothing lay a handmade rag doll, its button eyes missing, leaving only thread-marked holes that seemed to stare accusingly at the assembled adults. At the bottom, a child's drawing done in crayon, a crude rendering of what appeared to be an airport, with stick figures standing beneath fluorescent lights. And finally, a folded piece of lined paper containing a message written in unsteady letters, the penmanship suggesting a child or someone struggling to write, "If you find this suitcase, find me. I'm still here, but I can't speak." The restroom fell silent. 6 highly trained professionals stared at a note that defied every protocol in their extensive manuals. Agent Hale read the note again, his fingers trembling slightly. Without thinking, he reached into his breast pocket and withdrew a worn photograph, its edges softened from years of handling. The image showed a young girl with copper-colored hair and solemn eyes, standing beside a swing set she never used. His heart stopped as his gaze darted between the photograph and the crayon drawing from the suitcase. The same scene, the same child, the same doll clutched in small arms. "Sir," one of the younger agents prompted, noting Hale's sudden pallor. But Nathan Hale couldn't respond. His world had just shattered and reassembled in an impossible configuration. The missing persons case that had haunted him for 3 years, the one he'd been ordered to close 6 months ago, was suddenly, inexplicably alive again. The girl in the photo was Elsie Hale, his daughter, declared missing 3 years earlier, and according to this note, she had never left the airport. "Lock down the entire facility," he finally whispered, his voice barely audible. "Nobody enters or exits until I say so." Outside, as morning sunlight began streaming through the vast terminal windows, illuminating dust particles floating in silent air, thousands of passengers remained frozen in uncertainty. Security personnel exchanged confused glances. Pilots checked watches and calculated delays. And somewhere within the sprawling structure of Salt Lake City International Airport, a silent presence observed it all, waiting to be found. Nothing made sense anymore. Rusty wouldn't leave the bathroom. The Belgian Malinois sat rigid by the ventilation duct, his amber eyes fixed on the metal grate as if seeing something the humans couldn't. His ears twitched at imperceptible sounds, while his nose worked overtime, sampling the recycled air. The dog's handler, Officer Tanner, had never seen him behave this way, not during training, not during his previous successful discoveries of contraband. "He thinks someone's in there," Tanner explained, watching the dog scratch lightly at the duct's edge, or was recently. Nathan Hale nodded silently, his mind racing through possibilities as he stared at the small grey suitcase now carefully placed in an evidence bag. The terminal remained in lockdown, with FBI agents establishing a command center in the airport's administrative offices. Outside, news vans had already begun gathering like vultures, their satellite dishes reaching skyward. "I need all security footage," Hale instructed a young tech specialist who was setting up equipment. "Every camera, every angle. Go back 3 months." The specialist raised an eyebrow. "Sir, that's thousands of hours of—" "I said every frame," Hale interrupted, his voice low but carrying unmistakable authority. "Focus on this restroom and adjacent areas, and get someone to check if that ventilation system could sustain a person." A security guard hovering nearby cleared his throat nervously. "Agent Hale, there's something you should know." The man was in his 50s with deep lines etched around his eyes and a name tag reading Carson. "That particular suitcase, it's been reported before." Hale's head snapped up. "What do you mean, reported before?" Carson shifted uncomfortably. "Cleaning staff have mentioned it several times over the past few months, always in the same spot, always seemingly untouched, but whenever security would check, it would be gone." He hesitated before adding in a hushed tone, "Some of them started thinking the place was haunted. Management told us to stop entertaining silly rumors." "And nobody thought to check the cameras?" Hale demanded, his knuckles whitening around the evidence bag. "We did," Carson replied. "Nothing. It's like the bag appeared out of thin air." A chill crawled down Hale's spine as he processed this information. "So you're telling me," he said slowly, "that this suitcase has been appearing and disappearing for months and nobody escalated the matter?" The guard looked down. "It sounds crazy now, I know, but in a facility this size with thousands of passengers daily, things get missed." "Things get missed," Hale repeated hollowly, like a child who never left the building. In the adjacent room, analysts were already sifting through passenger manifests from 3 years prior. Elsie Hale, age 17 at the time of her disappearance, had been reported missing during a layover on a flight from Boston to Los Angeles. Her father, Reverend William Hale, no relation to Nathan despite the shared surname, had claimed she wandered off while he was on a business call. Security footage showed her entering a restroom, but never coming out. The search had been exhaustive, but fruitless. The case had particular significance for Nathan. He'd been assigned to it not just because it occurred on federal property, but because his own daughter would have been Elsie's age. His Emma had died of leukemia 5 years earlier, leaving an aching void that the agent filled with work and solitary evenings spent staring at old photographs. "Sir," called the tech specialist, "you might want to see this." On the screen, security footage from 3 months prior played in grainy black and white. A small figure in an oversized hoodie moved through the terminal at 2:43 a.m., keeping to shadows and avoiding direct camera angles with practiced precision. The figure carried a backpack and moved with the cautious gait of someone trying desperately not to be noticed. "Can you enhance the image?" Hale asked, leaning closer. "Already tried. Whoever this is knows the blind spots. They never show their face directly to any camera." Hale watched the footage loop several times. "This isn't someone who wandered in. This is someone who studied the security system." He straightened up. "Show me the terminal maps." Within minutes, blueprints of the airport were spread across a conference table. Hale's trained eye immediately identified potential hiding spots, maintenance closets, storage areas, the vast network of ventilation shafts, and the abandoned section of the old terminal that had been closed off during renovations 2 years ago. "She's been living here," he murmured more to himself than to anyone else. "Somehow she's been surviving right under everyone's noses." His phone buzzed with an incoming call, the lab with preliminary results from the suitcase contents. The doll's fabric contained traces of salt, consistent with dried tears. The crayon drawing had fingerprints that would need to be compared to Elsie's records, and the notepaper showed signs of being written recently, within the last week. As Hale processed this information, Rusty suddenly began barking frantically at the ventilation duct. The sound echoed through the command center, causing everyone to freeze. Then, as suddenly as it started, the dog fell silent and whined softly, pressing his nose against the metal grate. "Something moved in there," Tanner said quietly. "He's certain of it." Hale made an immediate decision. "Get maintenance to open every access point to that ventilation system, and I want thermal imaging of the entire network." As agents scrambled to fulfill his orders, Hale returned to the evidence table and picked up the crayon drawing. Looking closer now, he noticed details he'd missed in the initial shock of discovery. Tiny numbers written along the edges of the paper, too deliberate to be random. A pattern began forming in his mind, one that chilled him to the core. "Get me everything on Reverend William Hale," he ordered, "and find out where Elsie's mother is now." An analyst looked up from her computer. "According to our records, Margaret Hale left her husband 6 months after Elsie's disappearance. Current whereabouts unknown." Nathan nodded grimly. The case was taking a shape he recognized all too well. one of the darkest patterns in his 2 decades of work. But something still didn't make sense. If Elsie had been hiding in the airport all this time, why hadn't she sought help? What was she afraid of that was worse than 3 years of hiding in ducts and shadows? As darkness fell outside, the terminal remained eerily empty, except for law enforcement personnel. Nathan stood alone by the vast windows overlooking the tarmac, watching lights blink on aircraft that would remain grounded until morning. Behind him, the reflection of bustling agents created a ghostly overlay against the night sky. In his hand, he held the photograph of his daughter Emma, alongside the drawing found in the suitcase. The similarities he'd noticed earlier now seemed less certain in the harsh, fluorescent light. Was he projecting his own loss onto this case? Or was there something more connecting him to Elsie's fate? Either way, Nathan Hale knew he wouldn't rest until he found her, the girl who had somehow become a ghost in one of America's busiest airports, leaving only a suitcase by a mirror as proof she still existed. Morning light filtered through the tall windows of Salt Lake City International Airport, casting long shadows across the empty terminal. Nathan Hale hadn't slept. Dark circles underlined his eyes as he stared at the interview room whiteboard, now covered with timelines, photographs, and hastily scribbled notes. His tie hung loosened around his neck, and a collection of empty coffee cups testified to his night-long vigil. "Agent Hale?" A young analyst appeared at the door. "The former employees are here." Nathan nodded, running a hand through his disheveled hair. After combing through employee records, he'd requested interviews with anyone who had worked at the airport 3 years ago when Elsie disappeared. The response had been surprisingly robust. 23 people, many long since moved on to other jobs, had answered the FBI's call. The first interviewee was Martha Simmons, a retired gate agent who had worked at the airport for 32 years before retiring 18 months ago. She settled into the chair across from Nathan, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, hands folded primly in her lap. "Mrs. Simmons, thank you for coming in," Nathan began, sliding a photograph of Elsie across the table. "Do you recognize this young woman?" Martha adjusted her reading glasses and studied the image. Her weathered face softened with recognition. "Oh, the quiet one. Yes, I remember her." Nathan's heart jumped. "You saw her? After her reported disappearance?" "Well, I didn't know she was missing, did I?" Martha replied, frowning slightly. "Just thought she was one of those homeless youngsters. You know how it is these days. Kids with nowhere to go. She never caused trouble. How often did you see her? Where?" Nathan leaned forward, trying to contain his excitement. "Oh, every few weeks, usually early mornings or late nights. Always kept to herself. Skittish like a feral cat." Martha's eyes grew distant with memory. "I offered her a sandwich once. She wouldn't take it directly, waited until I set it down and walked away. Poor thing was terrified of people." One by one, the interviews painted a shocking picture. A janitor recalled seeing a girl sleeping in the interfaith prayer room. A bookstore clerk mentioned stolen granola bars, items always missing in the morning inventory, though nothing expensive enough to report. A baggage handler described glimpsing someone small darting behind the carousel machinery during graveyard shifts. None had reported these sightings officially. When Nathan asked why, the answers varied but shared a common theme. They assumed she was homeless or a runaway, or simply not their problem. In an environment where thousands of travelers passed through daily, one quiet shadow had become effectively invisible. By midday, Nathan's frustration had reached a boiling point. He slammed his palm against the table after the 15th similar account, startling the maintenance worker he was interviewing. "You're telling me," he said through gritted teeth, "that dozens of you saw this girl, a minor, clearly in distress, and not one person thought to call security or police?" The maintenance worker, a heavy-set man named Ron, shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Agent, it's not like that. We see all kinds here. And this girl, she wasn't like the usual runaways. She seemed, I don't know, like she wanted to be hidden." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Did it occur to you she might have been hiding from someone? That she might have been in danger?" Ron looked down at his calloused hands. "There was something else," he admitted reluctantly. "Once I found her sleeping in the mechanical room. When she saw me, she held up a note. It said, 'Please don't tell. He'll find me.' I figured she was running from an abusive boyfriend or something." "And you still didn't report it?" Nathan's voice was dangerously quiet. "I gave her my lunch that day and told her safer places to hide," Ron defended. "I thought I was helping." After the interviews, Nathan retreated to the evidence room, where analysts were reconstructing Elsie's life before her disappearance. The picture that emerged was troubling. Reverend William Hale, her father, was a prominent figure in a strict religious community outside Boston. His sermons, available online, preached rigid discipline and unwavering obedience. Several former congregation members described him as controlling and intimidating. Elsie's school records showed a bright student who rarely spoke in class. Her teachers noted concerns about her withdrawn behavior, but follow-ups with her parents always resulted in the same response. Elsie is simply shy and prefers to listen rather than speak. Her mother, Margaret, appeared in photographs as a thin woman with downcast eyes, standing slightly behind her husband in every image. After Elsie's disappearance, Margaret had become increasingly reclusive until she simply vanished 6 months later. No missing persons report was ever filed for her. "Sir," one of the evidence technicians interrupted Nathan's thoughts. "We found something you should see." In the airport's cavernous lost and found storage area, the technician led Nathan to a shelf containing items unclaimed for over 2 years. There, catalogued as simply "grey bag, no ID," sat a second suitcase similar to the one found in the bathroom. Nathan pulled on latex gloves and carefully opened it. Inside were dozens of folded papers, crude maps of the airport's layout, with specific areas marked in red crayon. Maintenance doors, security blind spots, ventilation access points, storage rooms with rarely checked inventory. Between these makeshift maps were pages of desperate, childlike writing, short phrases rather than complete sentences. "Not home. Stay here. Afraid. Mother gone. No talk." The handwriting matched the note from the first suitcase. Nathan spread the papers carefully on a nearby table, arranging them in what seemed to be chronological order based on the paper's aging. The earliest pages showed panic and confusion. Later ones revealed growing confidence in navigating the airport's hidden infrastructure. At the bottom of the suitcase, wrapped in a child's t-shirt, Nathan found something that made his blood run cold. A crude drawing in red crayon showing a bench, a woman in a blue dress and a dog, precisely matching what Rusty had found yesterday. "She knew," Nathan whispered. "Somehow, she knew we would find her." As Nathan stared at the drawing, a text alert vibrated his phone. The thermal imaging team had completed their scan of the ventilation system. No heat signatures detected. Wherever Elsie was hiding now, she had moved on from her previous shelter. Nathan returned to the command center, the second suitcase's contents now added to the evidence wall. As he stared at the expanding constellation of clues, a disturbing possibility took shape in his mind. Elsie hadn't just been hiding all these years. She had been watching, learning, perhaps even communicating in ways no one recognized. "Agent Hale?" His assistant appeared at his elbow. "There's something else you should know. We found no record of Elsie Hale's name on any passenger manifest from 3 years ago. According to the official record, she was never here." The revelation hit Nathan like a physical blow. If Elsie wasn't registered on any flight, then her father's story about her disappearing during a layover was a lie from the start. The question wasn't just how she had survived 3 years undetected, but why she had been brought to the airport in the first place. Outside the temporary FBI command post, the airport had partially reopened, allowing limited flights to resume. As passengers hurried through security checkpoints, none noticed the intense activity behind the frosted glass doors of the administrative section. None realized that somewhere among them, perhaps watching at that very moment, was a girl who had made this massive structure her sanctuary and prison for 3 long years. And none could hear Nathan Hale's whispered promise as he placed the red crayon drawing on the evidence board. "I will find you, Elsie, and this time you won't have to hide anymore." The anonymous tip arrived at exactly 2:47 a.m., rousing Nathan Hale from his fitful sleep on the uncomfortable cot in the makeshift FBI command center. His phone buzzed urgently on the metal desk beside him, the screen illuminating his exhausted face in the darkness. The message was brief, clinical, and unsigned. "Check security guard Michael Doyle's employment records from 2015. Compare footage from Terminal C, Gate 27 on the date of Elsie's disappearance. The truth is in plain sight." Nathan sat upright, instantly alert despite having slept less than 3 hours. His mind raced with questions. Who sent this? How did they know what he was investigating? And most importantly, was this a genuine lead or a deliberate misdirection? He hesitated only momentarily before making his decision. Sleep could wait. The truth couldn't. By 3:15 a.m., Nathan had assembled a small team of bleary-eyed analysts who, fueled by vending machine coffee and professional dedication, began combing through the airport's personnel archives. Michael Doyle's file appeared unremarkable at first glance. Hired as a security officer in 2009, clean record, consistent performance reviews, and still employed at the airport. "Nothing suspicious here," remarked one of the analysts, stifling a yawn. "Standard background check, regular promotions. He's now shift supervisor for overnight security." Nathan frowned, tapping his pen against the desk. "Dig deeper. Check his schedule around the time Elsie disappeared, and pull any disciplinary notes, no matter how minor." The discovery came at 4:23 a.m. Buried in the personnel file was a sealed envelope marked "Internal Review, Confidential." Inside was a brief report detailing an incident from 3 years ago, the exact time of Elsie's disappearance. Doyle had been questioned about a verbal altercation with a minor near Gate 27. The complaint had been filed by a passenger, but eventually dismissed due to lack of evidence and contradictory statements. The report contained one crucial detail. Doyle claimed he had never interacted with any unaccompanied minor that day. "Pull the security footage from that date," Nathan ordered, his fatigue evaporating as adrenaline coursed through his veins. "Terminal C, Gate 27. And get Doyle in here for questioning." The archival footage was grainy and choppy. Technology from 3 years ago wasn't what it was today. But as Nathan and his team reviewed the time-coded video, the truth began to emerge from the pixelated shadows. At 3:42 p.m. on the day Elsie disappeared, Michael Doyle could clearly be seen approaching a young girl sitting alone at the gate. The interaction appeared tense, with Doyle gesturing emphatically while the girl, whose face was obscured by her hoodie, shrunk away from him. "Zoom in on the background," Nathan instructed, squinting at the screen. "There, behind the trash can." The analyst adjusted the view, enhancing and stabilizing the image as best he could. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. A small figure was partially visible, crouched behind a waste receptacle, observing the interaction. Though the face wasn't clear, the posture and size matched perfectly with Elsie's description. "She was watching them," Nathan murmured. "But why?" The footage continued, showing Doyle walking away from the girl at the gate, visibly agitated. He disappeared from frame, only to reappear 7 minutes later at a service door leading to the tarmac. This time he wasn't alone. A tall man in civilian clothes was with him, their conversation appearing intense and furtive. Nathan leaned closer to the screen, struggling to make out the second man's features. The angle was wrong, and the quality too poor for facial recognition. "Can we identify the other individual?" he asked. The analyst shook her head. "Not from this footage, but based on his posture and the way he's standing, he looks like someone with authority." At 6:30 a.m., Michael Doyle was escorted into the airport's security office, confusion evident on his face. At 45, he had the weathered look of someone who'd spent years working overnight shifts, with thinning hair and deep creases around his eyes that suggested perpetual suspicion. "What's this about?" he demanded, looking from Nathan to the other FBI agents in the room. "I'm supposed to be off duty now." Nathan remained standing, deliberately looming over the seated security guard. "Mr. Doyle, I'm investigating the disappearance of Elsie Hale, which occurred in this airport 3 years ago." He placed a photograph of Elsie on the table. "According to our records, you told investigators at the time that you never saw this girl." Doyle glanced at the photo, his expression carefully neutral. "That's right, never saw her." "Then perhaps you can explain this." Nathan placed a printed still from the security footage in front of Doyle. "This is you, having what appears to be an argument with a young female at Gate 27 on the day Elsie disappeared." Color drained from Doyle's face, but he quickly recovered. That was just some runaway teen causing problems for passengers. Nothing to do with your missing girl." "And did you report this interaction with the runaway teen?" Nathan pressed. "I must have forgotten. It was a busy day." "Forgotten? An altercation serious enough that a passenger filed a complaint?" Nathan placed another document on the table, the internal review report. "You specifically denied any interaction with unaccompanied minors that day. That's a direct contradiction of what we can see with our own eyes." Sweat beaded on Doyle's forehead. "Look, it was 3 years ago. I talk to dozens of people every day. You can't expect me to remember every conversation. How about this conversation?" Nathan laid down another image, Doyle with the unidentified man by the service door. "Who were you meeting here, Mr. Doyle? And why use a restricted area for your chat?" Doyle's eyes widened slightly before he mastered his expression. "I don't recall." "You don't recall a private meeting in a restricted area on the same day a teenager disappeared from this airport?" Nathan's voice had gone dangerously quiet. "The same day you were seen arguing with a young female passenger? The same day another witness spotted Elsie Hale hiding behind a trash can, watching you?" The security guard's hands began to tremble. "I want a lawyer." "That's certainly your right," Nathan acknowledged, gathering the photos. "But let me be clear. We will identify the man you were meeting. We will uncover what happened that day. And if you obstructed the investigation into a missing minor, you will face serious charges." As Doyle was escorted out, Nathan's phone rang. It was the forensics team analyzing the contents of the second suitcase found in Lost and Found. "Agent Hale, we've completed the preliminary analysis of the drawings. Several of them show what appears to be the same security guard repeatedly. And there's something else, a pattern of dates and times written in the margins. They correspond exactly to shift changes for airport security. Whoever created these maps was tracking security personnel movements." Nathan's mind raced with implications. Elsie hadn't just been hiding. She'd been conducting surveillance, methodically documenting the patterns and procedures that would allow her to remain invisible within the airport's vast infrastructure. But why track Doyle specifically? What had she witnessed that made her afraid to come forward? The answer came unexpectedly, not from their investigation, but from the hospital. At 8:17 a.m., Nathan received an urgent call from his assistant. "Sir, Michael Doyle has been found unconscious in the employee parking lot. Blunt force trauma to the head. They're transporting him to University Hospital now." Nathan rushed to the scene, where forensics teams were already processing the area. Doyle's car, a modest sedan with airport employee parking permits, showed no signs of forced entry or struggle. Yet inside, placed carefully on the driver's seat, was a child's drawing. Crude but unmistakable, it depicted a stick-figure security guard and the words "You saw me," written in what appeared to be crayon, the same distinctive handwriting as the notes in the suitcases. Nathan stared at the drawing, his mind struggling to process what this meant. After 3 years of hiding, Elsie wasn't just watching, she was now making her presence known. She was communicating, she was acting, but the timing disturbed him deeply. How had Elsie known they were questioning Doyle today? How had she known where to find him? Unless, "Check every security camera in this parking lot," Nathan ordered, "and get me a list of everyone who had access to our investigation files in the past 24 hours. As the morning sun rose higher over Salt Lake City International Airport, Nathan Hale stood in the empty parking space, the child's drawing now sealed in an evidence bag. The investigation had taken a dramatic and dangerous turn. Elsie was no longer simply a victim to be found. She was an active participant in her own story, one step ahead of even the FBI, and somewhere in the sprawling terminal, perhaps watching through cameras or from hidden vantage points, she was waiting to see what they would do next. University Hospital hummed with the controlled chaos characteristic of all medical facilities. Doctors in white coats rushed past with purposeful strides, while nurses navigated the corridors with practiced efficiency. Nathan Hale stood outside the ICU, his badge displayed prominently on his rumpled suit jacket, as he stared through the glass partition at Michael Doyle's unconscious form. The security guard lay eerily still, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines that beeped and hummed in a sterile symphony. His head was heavily bandaged, the white gauze stark against his pallid skin. According to the attending physician, Doyle had suffered a severe concussion from what appeared to be a single blow to the back of the head with a blunt object, possibly a pipe or metal rod. "Any change?" asked Special Agent Chen, Nathan's second-in-command, approaching with 2 cups of hospital cafeteria coffee. Nathan accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. "Still unconscious. Doctor says he could wake up in an hour or a week. There's no way to know." Chen sipped her coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. Security footage from the parking lot was a dead end. Whoever attacked Doyle knew exactly where the cameras were. "Just like Elsie has known for years," Nathan murmured, more to himself than to Chen. The revelation that had crystallized in the parking lot still haunted him. Elsie Hale wasn't merely surviving within the airport. She had become one with it, learning its rhythms and blind spots with the precision of a naturalist studying wildlife. The crude maps found in the second suitcase showed ventilation paths, security patrol patterns, and maintenance access points that weren't even on the official blueprints. The drawings from Doyle's car match the handwriting from the suitcases, Chen continued, consulting her tablet. Lab confirms it's the same person. But here's where it gets strange. The crayon used on the "You Saw Me" note is fresh, maximum 6 months old, based on the waxy composition. Nathan's brow furrowed. So either Elsie has access to new supplies, or someone else left that message. Chen finished his thought. The implications hung in the air between them. If Elsie wasn't alone, if she had help, then the scope of their investigation would need to expand dramatically. Nathan's phone vibrated with an incoming text. It was from the evidence team analyzing the drawings from the second suitcase. Found recurring figure in multiple sketches. Female, blue dress, appears in 17 separate drawings. Attached was a photo of one of Elsie's crude drawings. A bench near what appeared to be a chapel, with a stick-figure woman in a blue dress sitting alone. "A woman in blue," Nathan murmured, remembering the words from the brief description they'd constructed of Elsie's story. "The chapel. We need to check the airport's interfaith prayer room." 20 minutes later, Nathan and Chen walked through the sliding doors of the airport's small non-denominational chapel, tucked away in a quiet corner of Terminal B. The space was simple and serene. A few rows of plain wooden benches, abstract stained glass that cast colorful patterns on the floor, and a small altar adorned with texts from various religions. The room was empty, except for an elderly woman arranging fresh flowers on a side table. She wore a navy blue dress with a white cardigan, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. At the sound of their entrance, she turned, revealing kind eyes set in a face lined with decades of living. "May I help you?" she asked, her voice gentle but clear. Nathan approached, showing his badge. "FBI, ma'am, I'm Agent Hale, and this is Agent Chen. We're investigating a case and believe you might have information that could help us." The woman nodded, seemingly unsurprised by their presence. "I'm Evelyn Murray. I volunteer here 3 days a week. Have done for nearly 20 years. She gestured to the flowers. "People find comfort in fresh blooms, even in times of distress. Especially then, perhaps." Nathan produced a photograph of Elsie. "Mrs. Murray, have you ever seen this young woman? Her name is Elsie Hale." Evelyn took the photo, studying it carefully. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes remained sharp and focused. After a long moment, she closed her eyes and let out a soft sigh. "She would watch me," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Never coming in fully, just standing in the doorway or sitting in the last row. Sometimes I'd find little paper flowers on the bench where I usually sit." Her eyes opened, glistening with unshed tears. "I thought perhaps she was a troubled soul seeking comfort but too frightened to ask for it directly. I never pushed." Nathan felt his pulse quicken. "When did you last see her?" "It's been months now." 6, perhaps 7. She stopped coming suddenly. Evelyn returned the photograph, her expression troubled. "I worried something had happened to her, but in a place like this, people come and go. You learn not to become too attached." "Did she ever speak to you?" Chen asked gently. Evelyn shook her head. "Not a word. But about 3 months ago I found something unusual." She walked to a small cabinet behind the altar and withdrew a plain manila envelope. She left this with a small container of food, homemade soup still warm. On the napkin was written, "Me disculpa, mamai." "I don't know what it means." "I'm sorry, Mom," Nathan translated, his throat tightening. "It's Portuguese." Chen looked surprised. Elsie's family wasn't Portuguese. Her father was a pastor from Boston. Nathan carefully accepted the envelope from Evelyn. Inside was a single napkin, folded neatly around what appeared to be a partial fingerprint, rendered in what might have been sauce or gravy. She left her fingerprint deliberately, Nathan realized, the implications stunning him. She wanted to be identified. She wanted us to find her. "There's something else," Evelyn added, her voice faltering slightly. "The last time I felt her presence here, though I didn't actually see her, I found a drawing slipped under the flower vase." She hesitated, as if weighing whether to continue. "It showed 2 dogs and a suitcase. At the time I thought nothing of it, but yesterday when I heard about the incident with the security dog and the unclaimed luggage..." Nathan and Chen exchanged meaningful glances. The timeline was accelerating. Elsie wasn't merely hiding anymore. She was orchestrating a series of events designed to reveal her presence. "Mrs. Murray," Nathan said carefully, "has anyone else ever asked you about this girl?" Perhaps another airport employee or security officer. Evelyn's expression darkened. About a year ago, a man claimed to be her uncle, said he was looking for his runaway niece. He showed me a different photo, same girl but younger. Something felt wrong. I told him I'd never seen her. Her hands twisted together anxiously. I've volunteered here long enough to recognize predators, Agent Hale. They have a certain look in their eyes. Would you recognize this man if you saw him again? I believe I would. He had cold eyes, the kind that don't match the smile. As they prepared to leave, Evelyn called after them. Agent Hale, there's one more thing. A few days ago I found another paper flower on my bench. After so many months of nothing, she pulled a small, intricately folded paper rose from her cardigan pocket. I think she's trying to tell me something. Nathan carefully accepted the paper flower. As he turned it over in his hand, he noticed tiny writing inside one of the folded petals. Squinting, he made out the words, "Basement storage, old terminal, where no one hears." His heart raced as the pieces began to align. The old terminal, closed for renovations 2 years ago, its lower levels largely forgotten by the current staff, the perfect hiding place for someone who wanted to disappear but never leave. As Nathan and Chen hurried back to the command center, the agent found himself wondering about the timing of it all. Why now, after 3 years? What had changed to make Elsie ready to be found? The answer came that afternoon in the form of an archived maintenance recording discovered by one of the evidence technicians. The device, an old cassette recorder used by maintenance staff to log issues, had been found in a supply closet near the chapel. Most of the tape contained mundane maintenance reports, but at the very end, barely audible beneath the static, was a young woman's voice. "If they find my suitcase," the voice whispered, "I'll come home." Nathan listened to the recording again and again, each time feeling a chill run down his spine. The voice was soft but determined, with none of the fear or panic one might expect from someone who had been hiding for years. Instead, there was a strange certainty, as if Elsie had been following a plan all along, a plan that was now reaching its conclusion. "Agent Hale," called one of the analysts, interrupting his thoughts. "We identified that noise in the background of the recording. It's the hydraulic door to the subterranean level of the old terminal. The sound signature is unique because of a faulty pressure valve." Nathan immediately rose from his chair, adrenaline surging through his veins. "Assemble a team. Non-threatening approach. No weapons visible. And get that dog, Rusty, and his handler. If Elsie trusted him once, she might again." As he gathered his jacket, Nathan paused to look once more at the collection of evidence they'd accumulated. The drawings, the notes, the maps. For 3 years, Elsie Hale had survived alone in one of America's busiest airports, invisible to the thousands who passed by her daily. She had watched, waited, and planned for this moment. And now, finally, Nathan was about to meet the ghost of Salt Lake City International Airport, face to face. The forgotten terminal of Salt Lake City International Airport stood in stark contrast to its modern counterpart. Abandoned midway through renovations when funding was redirected toward a completely new facility, it existed in a liminal state, neither fully operational nor completely decommissioned. Dust sheets draped over check-in counters like funeral shrouds. Construction barriers created maze-like pathways through what had once been a bustling concourse. The air hung heavy with the peculiar stillness of spaces once filled with human activity, now left to silence. Nathan Hale led a small team through these ghostly surroundings, their footsteps echoing against marble floors and concrete walls. He had deliberately kept the group minimal, himself, Agent Chen, Officer Tanner with Rusty the Belgian Malinois, and 2 technical specialists equipped with thermal imaging devices. A larger force might frighten Elsie away, and after 3 years of hiding, she would be hypervigilant to any perceived threat. "The door to the sub-basement should be just ahead," whispered one of the techs, consulting a digital blueprint on his tablet. Behind that temporary wall, the temporary barrier, plywood sheets spray-painted with authorized personnel only, had clearly been in place for years, its edges softened by dust. Nathan carefully moved it aside, revealing a heavy steel door with a keypad lock that glowed with an unexpected green light. "It's already unlocked," Chen noted, her hand instinctively moving toward her concealed weapon. Nathan raised a hand, signaling her to stand down. "She wants us to enter," he said quietly. "This is part of her plan." The door opened with a hydraulic hiss that matched the sound from the recording. Behind it, a utilitarian stairwell descended into darkness, emergency lighting casting weak pools of illumination every 20 feet or so. The air that rushed up to meet them was surprisingly fresh, not the stale, musty atmosphere one would expect from an abandoned basement. The ventilation systems are still operational, observed the second tech. Minimal power consumption, probably why maintenance never flagged it. Rusty suddenly tensed, his ears pricking forward. A low whine escaped his throat, not threatening but alert, interested. He pulled slightly at his leash, eager to descend. "He's picking up a scent," Tanner explained. "Not distressed, but definitely focused." Nathan nodded. "Let him lead, but keep him controlled." The group descended cautiously, their shadows elongating grotesquely against the concrete walls. At the bottom of the stairs, they entered a long corridor lined with maintenance rooms, storage closets, and various mechanical spaces that kept the airport functioning. Most doors were locked or blocked, but halfway down the corridor, one door stood ajar, a faint glow spilling from within. Rusty pulled more insistently toward this room, his tail now wagging slightly. Nathan approached first, deliberately making his footsteps audible. "Elsie," he called softly. "My name is Agent Nathan Hale. We found your messages. We're here to help you." No response came from the room. Nathan gestured for the others to wait as he slowly pushed the door wider, revealing what appeared to have been an old break room for maintenance staff. It had been transformed into something between a living space and an intelligence center. Maps and diagrams covered one wall, detailed layouts of the airport with colored lines tracking security patrols, janitorial schedules, and peak traffic times. Another wall held a collage of images clearly cut from magazines and newspapers, mostly scenes of normal family life. Dinners, parks, celebrations. In the center of the room sat a makeshift bed composed of airport blankets, neatly arranged over what looked like seat cushions from gate areas. Most striking, however, was a small desk constructed from storage crates. On it sat several notebooks, a collection of colored pencils and crayons, and, to Nathan's surprise, a functioning laptop connected to what appeared to be a spliced security feed showing various areas of the active terminal. "She's been watching everything," Chen whispered, awe evident in her voice, "from right under our noses." Rusty suddenly turned, his attention drawn to a narrow door at the back of the room, what might have once been a supply closet. He whined softly, pawing at the ground. Nathan approached the closet door. "Elsie, we're not here to hurt you, we just want to make sure you're safe." After a moment of silence, a voice, soft, slightly raspy from disuse, came from behind the door. "Is the dog with you? The one who found my suitcase?" Nathan's heart leaped. After days of following ghostly trails and cryptic messages, hearing Elsie's actual voice seemed almost surreal. "Yes," he answered. "His name is Rusty. He helped us find your message." Another pause. "Can I see him first? Just him?" Nathan looked to Tanner, who nodded and carefully unclipped Rusty's leash. The dog remained perfectly still, as if understanding the delicacy of the situation. "Go ahead, Rusty," Tanner said quietly. "Say hello." The Belgian Malinois approached the door cautiously, sniffing at the crack beneath it. After a moment, the door opened just enough for a small hand to emerge. Rusty sniffed the hand gently, then licked it once. A sound that might have been a suppressed laugh came from behind the door. Slowly, inch by inch, the door opened wider, revealing a young woman crouched in the small space. Elsie Hale looked both younger and older than her 20 years. Her frame was slight, almost fragile, with the wiry strength of someone accustomed to physical privation. Her hair had been cut short, presumably by her own hand, and her clothes, clearly gathered from lost and found bins, were worn but meticulously clean. Most striking were her eyes, large, intelligent, and wary, taking in everything with the heightened awareness of prey in the presence of potential predators. She focused first on Rusty, running her fingers through his fur with practiced gentleness. Then, cautiously, she raised her eyes to meet Nathan's. "You found my drawings," she stated simply. Nathan nodded, maintaining a non-threatening posture. "Yes, and your notes. You've been very brave, Elsie." A flicker of something, perhaps surprise, perhaps doubt, crossed her face. "You're the first person to call me that in 3 years. Everyone else just looked through me, like I was invisible." "We see you now," Nathan said gently, "and we want to help." Elsie's gaze shifted to the others in the room, assessing each one with quick, nervous glances. "Did he send you?" To find me? Who, Elsie? Your father? Her expression hardened. He is not my father. He is my captor. The words came out with quiet intensity. And if he knows you've found me, he'll try to take me back. Nathan exchanged a glance with Chen, whose hand had returned to hover near her weapon. Reverend William Hale isn't involved in our investigation, Elsie. We're here because of the messages you left, because you wanted to be found. Elsie stood slowly, one hand still resting on Rusty's head for reassurance. Not by just anyone, by someone who would listen, someone who would understand. She looked directly at Nathan. Someone like you. Why me? Nathan asked, genuinely puzzled. I saw your picture in a newspaper article about another missing girl. You looked kind. She hesitated, then added, You have the same eyes as your daughter. The statement hit Nathan like a physical blow. How could she possibly know about Emma? His personal history wasn't public knowledge, and he kept his private life strictly separate from his professional one. As if sensing his confusion, Elsie moved to the desk and opened a drawer, withdrawing a yellowed newspaper clipping. I found this years ago, in a discarded Sunday paper. You were interviewed about child trafficking cases. They mentioned your daughter had died, said it was why you were so dedicated to finding missing children. Nathan took the clipping with slightly trembling hands. He remembered the interview, one of the few he'd ever granted during a particularly emotional case shortly after Emma's death. He'd regretted it immediately afterward, uncomfortable with having his personal pain made public. Elsie, he said carefully, I need to ask you some difficult questions about what happened 3 years ago, about why you've been hiding. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking younger and more vulnerable. Not here. Not yet. Her eyes darted to the security feed on the laptop. He has people watching, even now. We need to go somewhere safe first. Who has people watching, Elsie? The man in the church. The one who bought me. Her voice had dropped to a whisper. The one who made me change my name, learn English, forget my real family. Her eyes glazed slightly, lost in painful memory. I was Maria before, from São Paulo. I had a mother, a father, a little brother. Then one day, I was Elsie. And he told me they were dead. The revelation stunned the room into silence. The case had just expanded far beyond a simple missing person, into territory that suggested human trafficking, identity theft, and who knew what other crimes. We'll protect you, Nathan promised, his voice firm with conviction. But we need to understand everything that happened. Will you come with us? Somewhere safe. Elsie hesitated, her gaze moving around the room that had been her sanctuary for 3 years. I need to bring something first. She returned to the closet and emerged with a small box clutched protectively against her chest. Evidence, she explained. I've been collecting it, for when I was ready. As they prepared to leave, Elsie stopped at the desk one last time, pressing a key on the laptop. A series of video files began transferring to a USB drive. What are those? Chen asked. The last recordings, Elsie replied, her voice suddenly hard with determination. Of everyone who knew I was here and chose to do nothing. Of Doyle taking money to look the other way. Of the maintenance man who found me sleeping and pretended he hadn't. She turned to face them, and for the first time, Nathan saw not a victim, but a survivor. Fierce, resourceful, and unbroken. I wasn't just hiding, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. I was building a case against all of them. As they ascended the stairs, Elsie paused, looking back at the space that had been both her prison and her sanctuary. In the weak emergency lighting, her expression was impossible to read. Perhaps regret, perhaps relief, perhaps something more complex that had no simple name. 3 years, she murmured. 3 years where no one could scream. Then she turned and continued upward, toward a world she had observed but not participated in for 3 long, silent years. The FBI safe house was a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a quiet suburban neighborhood 30 miles from the airport. Nothing about its beige exterior or neatly maintained lawn suggested it was anything other than another middle-class dwelling on a street full of similar houses. Inside, however, sophisticated security systems monitored every approach, and the windows were reinforced with bulletproof glass, invisible protection for those who needed to disappear. Elsie Hale sat at the kitchen table, her thin fingers wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate she hadn't touched. The ordinary domestic setting seemed to unsettle her more than the sterile interrogation rooms at the FBI field office where they'd spent the previous 6 hours. There she had methodically unpacked her evidence box, walking investigators through her meticulous documentation of airport staff who had either helped or hindered her during her 3 years in hiding. Her testimony had been clear, detailed, and devastatingly precise, betraying an intelligence and observational skill that had allowed her not merely to survive, but to build a comprehensive case against those who had wronged her. Now, in the quiet of the safe house kitchen, that composure was beginning to crack. "Are the curtains closed?" she asked for the 3rd time, her eyes darting to the windows, despite knowing they were covered. Nathan Hale nodded patiently from his seat across the table. "Completely, and there are agents outside. No one knows you're here." Elsie's shoulders remained tense, her posture that of someone prepared to bolt at the first sign of danger. The transition from her hidden basement sanctuary to this open environment clearly overwhelmed her. Too many doors, too many windows, too many potential points of vulnerability. "You should eat something," Nathan suggested, indicating the sandwich that the safe house caretaker had prepared before discreetly withdrawing to give them privacy. Elsie glanced at the food as if it were a foreign object. "I'm used to eating at night. When everyone's gone, it's safer." "You're safe now," Nathan reminded her gently. A hollow laugh escaped her. "That's what the social worker said when I was 12, right before he came and took me from the group home in Sao Paulo." Her eyes took on a distant quality. "I didn't understand what was happening. There were papers, official stamps. Everyone said it was legal, that I was being adopted by an American family who would give me a better life." She finally took a sip of the hot chocolate, grimacing slightly at the sweetness she was unaccustomed to. "The first thing he did was take away my clothes, my photos, everything from Brazil. Said I needed to forget that life. That God had chosen me for a higher purpose as his daughter." Nathan's jaw tightened at the mention of Reverend William Hale, but he kept his expression neutral. "And your real parents?" "Told they died in a car crash 3 days after I left, but I never believed it." Elsie's fingers trembled slightly against the mug. "I tried to run away twice. The first time, he locked me in the basement for a week. The second time, he hired a man, he called him a youth counselor, who used electric shocks as aversion therapy whenever I spoke Portuguese or mentioned Brazil." The clinical way she recounted the abuse was perhaps more heartbreaking than if she had broken down in tears. Nathan had encountered similar defense mechanisms in other trauma survivors, the emotional distance a necessary shield for survival. "When did you first learn you might have been trafficked?" he asked carefully. "When I was 15, I found documents in his study, records of payments to an organization called New Beginnings International Adoptions. Receipts. Like I was merchandise." Her voice remained steady, but her knuckles whitened around the mug. "There were photos of other children too, all adopted from different countries, all placed with wealthy families who made generous donations to his church." Nathan made a mental note to expand the investigation significantly. If William Hale was involved in international child trafficking disguised as adoptions, the case would extend far beyond Elsie. "And the airport? How did you end up there for 3 years? For the first time, a flash of something like pride crossed Elsie's face. "He was taking me to a special school in California for troubled girls. Really a reprogramming facility for his church. I knew if I went there, I'd never get out." She set the mug down with careful precision. "The airport was crowded. He was distracted talking to someone on the phone about another placement. I saw my chance and took it. But why stay there? Why not try to get help? Who would believe me? A foreign teenager accusing a respected American pastor. With legal adoption papers." She shook her head. "I'd tried before. The police called him to come get me. Said I was confused, traumatized from losing my real parents. The second time, a church member found me and brought me back before I could even talk to anyone. The logic was heartbreakingly sound. A system designed to protect children had instead become the perfect cover for exploiting them, with religious authority providing an additional shield against scrutiny. The airport seemed safer," Elsie continued. "So many people, so many places to hide. I thought it would be temporary, just until I figured out what to do next. But then I discovered the old maintenance tunnels, the forgotten storage rooms. I realized no one really sees the people who clean or serve food or carry luggage. I could hide in plain sight." Her eyes took on a distant quality, remembering. "The first year was the hardest. Learning where to find food, where to sleep safely, how to stay clean. But then I started noticing patterns, security shift changes, when certain areas would be empty. Which employees looked the other way if they spotted me? Like Mrs. Murray in the chapel," Nathan suggested. A ghost of a smile touched Elsie's lips. She never pushed, just left food sometimes, or warm clothes in winter. She reminded me of my real mother. The mention of her birth mother brought a shadow across Elsie's face. She withdrew a worn photograph from her pocket, clearly one of her most treasured possessions. It showed a smiling Brazilian woman with a young girl and toddler boy. I only had this because it was in my shoe when he took me. He never found it. Nathan studied the image carefully. Have you tried to contact your family in Brazil? Elsie shook her head. I was afraid he would intercept any messages, and later I wasn't sure if they were still alive. If he lied about their death, what else would he do to keep me from finding them? A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Agent Chen entered with a tablet in hand, her expression carefully controlled in that way that told Nathan she had significant news. We've located Margaret Hale, she announced. Elsie's head snapped up. His wife? The quiet one? Chen nodded, glancing at Nathan for permission before continuing. She's in a women's shelter in Idaho. Has been for almost 2 years. She's agreed to speak with us. Chen hesitated, then added, she says she left after discovering what her husband was really doing with the adoptions. Hope flickered across Elsie's face, the first genuine positive emotion Nathan had seen from her. She knows about the others? She can prove it wasn't just me? It appears so, Chen confirmed. She took documents with her when she fled. The shelter director says she's been too terrified to come forward, convinced her husband would find her. Nathan rose from his chair. I need to speak with her immediately. Agent Chen will stay with you, Elsie. Panic flashed in Elsie's eyes. You're leaving? Just temporarily, Nathan assured her. We need Margaret's testimony to build the strongest possible case. Elsie nodded reluctantly, her survival instincts warring with her need for justice. When you see her, ask her about the blue umbrella. She'll know what it means. Nathan raised an eyebrow questioningly. It was her signal, Elsie explained. When he was in a dangerous mood, she would leave a blue umbrella by the door. It meant be invisible today. She was trying to protect me, in her way. As Nathan prepared to leave, Elsie suddenly gripped his arm with surprising strength. Be careful. His church has members everywhere. Police, government, businesses. Her eyes burned with intensity, born from years of vigilance. Trust no one, you don't absolutely have to. The warning sent a chill through Nathan. If William Hale had the connections Elsie suggested, their investigation would face obstacles beyond the usual challenges of building a trafficking case. I'll be back soon, he promised. Try to rest if you can. After Nathan departed, Elsie stood at the window, peering through a narrow gap in the curtains at the ordinary suburban street beyond. Agent Chen gave her space, understanding the young woman's need to check her surroundings, to assure herself of safety after years of constant vigilance. He's going to come for me, Elsie said softly, still staring out at the gathering dusk. He won't let me tell what I know. He won't find you here, Chen assured her. Elsie turned, her expression not fearful but grimly determined. I spent 3 years watching people who thought no one could see them. I learned how systems fail, how security breaks down. She gestured around the safe house. This is just another place with walls and doors can always be breached. She returned to the table and picked up her hot chocolate, now cold. When Agent Hale returns, I need to show him the recordings from the ventilation room, the ones I couldn't download before we left. What recordings? Chen asked. The ones that show who else was involved, the airport officials, the immigration officers who looked the other way. Elsie's voice hardened. The ones that show I wasn't the only one hidden there, even if I was the only one who stayed. In the gathering darkness outside, a dog barked once and then fell silent. Elsie's head turned toward the sound, her body instantly alert. The moment passed, but the tension in her frame remained, the hypervigilance of someone who had survived by noticing what others missed. When this is over, she said quietly, I want to go home, to Brazil, to find out if my real family is still alive. Chen nodded. We'll help you with that. Elsie's smile was sad and knowing, the expression of someone who had learned early that promises, however well-intentioned, often shattered against the hard edges of reality. Here, no one screams, she murmured, repeating the phrase she had written on her basement wall. But soon, everyone will hear. The media circus erupted with predictable ferocity. Television vans with satellite dishes crowded the federal courthouse parking lot, their logos emblazoned on their sides like battle standards. Reporters clutched coffee cups and microphones with equal desperation, jockeying for position near the building's entrance. The morning air was charged with the particular electricity that accompanies stories that capture both public outrage and morbid fascination. Airport ghost girl found alive. Pastor arrested in international trafficking ring. 3-year airport hideout. How did no one notice? The headlines competed for attention across newspapers, websites, and the ubiquitous scrolling chyrons on 24-hour news channels. What had begun as a local human interest story, the discovery of a missing girl hiding in an airport, had exploded into a national sensation once the allegations against Reverend William Hale became public. Nathan Hale watched the coverage from his office at the FBI field office, his expression grim as commentators speculated wildly about details they couldn't possibly know. The investigation had expanded dramatically in the 2 weeks since Elsie's rescue, with international law enforcement agencies now involved in tracing the fates of at least 14 other children adopted through William Hale's network. Margaret Hale's testimony had proven invaluable. After years of silent compliance born of fear, the Reverend's wife had meticulously documented her husband's activities before fleeing with a suitcase containing financial records, correspondence with overseas facilitators, and photographs of children who had passed through their home en route to wealthy adoptive families willing to pay handsomely for a child with the right characteristics. A knock at his door interrupted Nathan's thoughts. Agent Chen entered, looking tired but determined. Reverend Hale's lawyer is pushing for bail again. Claims his client's charitable work and strong community ties make him a minimal flight risk. Nathan scoffed. The man has offshore accounts in 3 countries and connections to international smuggling networks. He's the definition of a flight risk. Judge Calloway agrees. Bail denied for the 3rd time. Chen handed him a folder. Preliminary results from the digital forensics team. They've recovered deleted emails from Hale's church server that corroborate Elsie's account. He was arranging to send her to that special school in California, which appears to be little more than a reprogramming facility for trafficking victims who showed too much resistance. Nathan flipped through the report, his jaw tightening as he read snippets of clinical discussions about behavioral correction and suppression of native identity markers. "And Michael Doyle?" he asked, thinking of the security guard who had been attacked in the airport parking lot. Awake, but claiming memory loss about the attack, his lawyer has negotiated a plea deal in exchange for testimony against the larger network. Turns out he was paid to look the other way whenever he spotted Elsie, or other transitional cases passing through the airport. Nathan nodded, unsurprised. The investigation had revealed Salt Lake City International as a key transit point in the trafficking network, chosen specifically for its connections to international flights and the presence of cooperative staff in key positions. "And Elsie?" he asked, his voice softening slightly. Chen's expression changed, concern replacing professional detachment. Still refusing to leave the safe house, the trauma therapist says it's expected. After 3 years in a confined space she controlled, the outside world is overwhelming. She'll only speak with you, Mrs. Murray from the chapel, and the dog handler. Nathan glanced at his watch. "I'll stop by this afternoon. Any progress on locating her family in Brazil? Our São Paulo office has a promising lead. A family named Silva reported their 12-year-old daughter missing 7 years ago. The timing and description match. They're running DNA comparisons now. The thought that Elsie, or Maria as she had been born, might be reunited with her birth family after years of trauma brought a moment of lightness to what had been a grueling investigation. So few trafficking cases ended with even this much justice, let alone the possibility of restoration. "I should warn you," Chen added, her expression growing more serious. "The media has gotten wind of Elsie's real identity. They're starting to dig into the Brazilian angle." Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We need to get ahead of this. Prepare a statement emphasizing the ongoing nature of the investigation and the priority of protecting the victim." As Chen left to handle the press issues, Nathan turned back to the window, watching the reporters below. The public's appetite for this story was voracious, but fleeting. In a week, perhaps 2, another sensational case would capture their attention, and Elsie would be left to rebuild her shattered life away from the spotlight. Would she ever fully recover? The psychological damage of her experiences, being trafficked, forced to adopt a new identity, subjected to abuse, then surviving alone for 3 years in hiding, would require years of intensive therapy. But Nathan had seen resilience before in survivors of trauma, an almost supernatural capacity for healing that defied professional prognosis. That afternoon, as promised, Nathan visited Elsie at the safe house. He found her sitting in the small backyard, her face tilted toward the sun with the wonder of someone who had spent years in artificial light. Rusty, the Belgian Malinois, lay at her feet, his presence a comforting constant during her transition back into the world. "The Brazilian authorities think they've located your family," Nathan said without preamble. Knowing Elsie preferred directness to gentle lead-ins, she opened her eyes, squinting against the sunlight. "Are they alive? All of them?" "It appears so. Your mother, father, and a brother who would be about 13 now." Tears welled in Elsie's eyes, the first Nathan had seen from her despite all she had endured and recounted. "They didn't forget me. They've been searching for you for 7 years. Filed police reports, contacted international agencies, even maintained a website with your photo." Nathan handed her a printout of the site, showing a smiling 12-year-old with the same solemn eyes. They never gave up. Elsie's fingers traced the image of her younger self, her touch reverent. "I tried so hard not to forget their faces. At night, in the airport, I would recite their names over and over so I wouldn't lose them." "We can arrange a video call once the DNA confirmation comes through," Nathan offered, "and eventually repatriation if that's what you want." She nodded, her gaze returning to the sky. "I want to go home, but first I need to see this through. I need to make sure he can never do this to anyone else." Her determination was unwavering. Despite her fragility, Elsie had insisted on providing detailed testimony against William Hale and his network. She had sat for hours with sketch artists to identify other children she had seen pass through the Hale household. She had reviewed security footage from the airport to point out staff members who had been complicit. "The press conference is tomorrow," Nathan reminded her gently. "Are you sure you want to be there? You don't have to show your face or speak." Elsie's expression hardened slightly. "I spent 3 years being invisible, Agent Hale. I won't hide anymore." She reached down to scratch behind Rusty's ears, drawing comfort from the dog's steady presence. "Besides, people need to see me, really see me, or they'll never understand how someone can disappear in plain sight." The following morning, the federal courthouse steps were even more crowded, as officials prepared to make their first detailed public statement on the case. Nathan stood slightly behind Elsie as she approached the forest of microphones, her slim frame nearly lost in the standard-issue FBI windbreaker that draped her shoulders. The clamor of shouted questions subsided as she stepped forward. Camera flashes sparked like lightning around her, but she didn't flinch. Her prepared statement was brief but powerful, a survivor's testimony delivered in clear, unfaltering Portuguese, then repeated in the English she had been forced to adopt. When she finished, a reporter called out, "What message do you have for others who might be trapped in similar situations?" Elsie paused, considering. "Look for the ones who seem invisible," she finally said. "The ones who flinch at loud noises. The ones with rehearsed answers. The ones who never make eye contact." Her voice grew stronger. "They are there, all around you, hoping someone will truly see them." As the press conference concluded, Elsie was escorted back to a waiting vehicle. Mrs. Murray from the airport chapel approached, embracing her briefly before pressing something into her hand. A small paper flower, meticulously folded. Inside the secure vehicle, Elsie carefully unfolded the flower to reveal a note in Mrs. Murray's handwriting. "You were never invisible to me. Be free now, little bird." For the first time since her rescue, a genuine smile transformed Elsie's face. Not the careful mask she had presented to investigators, or the composed expression she maintained for the cameras, but a momentary glimpse of the girl she might have been without the shadow of trauma. 3 days later, in a private room at the FBI field office, Elsie sat before a computer screen, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Nathan stood nearby, ready to offer support, but giving her space for this moment she had dreamed of for 7 years. The video call connected, revealing a modest living room in Sao Paulo. 3 faces appeared on screen, a woman with graying hair and Elsie's same solemn eyes, a broad-shouldered man with a neatly trimmed beard, and a teenage boy who was clearly uncomfortable in his formal shirt. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, the weight of years and distance and suffering creating a gulf that words seemed inadequate to bridge. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Elsie spoke the words she had rehearsed every night in her airport sanctuary. "Mamãe, papai, sou eu, Maria, estou viva." The woman on the screen pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Nossa filha," she sobbed. "Nossa Maria voltou para casa." Our daughter, our Maria, has come home. In the corner of the room, Nathan quietly stepped out, giving the reunited family privacy for their first conversation in 7 years. As he closed the door, he caught a glimpse of Elsie, Maria, leaning toward the screen, her fingers reaching out as if to touch the faces of those who had never stopped searching for her. Some endings, Nathan reflected, were really beginnings in disguise. Elsie's story reminds us that sometimes the most invisible among us carry the heaviest burdens and the deepest courage. For 3 years, she walked among thousands of travelers who never truly saw her, a ghost in plain sight, surviving through her own ingenuity while meticulously building a case that would one day bring justice not just for herself, but for countless others trapped in similar nightmares. Would you have had the strength to survive as she did, or the wisdom to notice those who seem invisible in your own daily life? In a world where we're constantly connected yet increasingly isolated, how many others like Elsie exist in the shadows of our communities? Seen but unseen, present yet overlooked. The true measure of our humanity lies not in how we treat those who command our attention, but in whether we extend our compassion to those who have been silenced. As Agent Hale discovered, sometimes the most profound connections form when we simply stop to truly see someone who has been invisible for far too long. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, please support our channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these powerful narratives to light. Remember, somewhere in your community, someone may be waiting, hoping for you to be the person who finally sees them. Sometimes, the simple act of paying attention can be the first step in someone else's journey toward healing.